All right, guys, here we go. Next chapter, Federalist versus Anti-Federalist. It says there, what do we know? Um, I know that you guys have a decent amount I know you covered this your sophomore year, so there's a little bit of background with this. What we want to look at here today is kind of just an introduction of where both sides stood and why they believed what they believed. Now, you got to think about this too. The Federalists, Anti-Federalists, the best way to think of this is it's still to this day, we have a debate over, is government too big? Are they involved in my life too much? All of these different things come up. This goes back all the way to the Federalist versus Anti-Federalist debates, okay? People's fear of an overreaching federal government, all right, that was going to suppress their rights, all of these different things. These are still debated today. But this initial Federalist versus Anti-Federalist debate was going to be a deciding factor on whether or not the Constitution would be signed. Okay, so that's the little bit that we know right now. Be able to explain the difference between a Federalist and Anti-Federalist is, like I said, that's your main expectation for this one in goal. This chapter is not nearly as long as the other one, not that that was that long, but we just kind of got to brush up and know the difference between the two, and that's the whole chapter, and put it into play. So what should you be able to know? What are the terms, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers? I want you to know what necessary and proper clause is. This is an incredibly important piece to the U.S. Constitution, all right, oftentimes referred to as the elastic clause. And then obviously knowing Federalist and Anti-Federalist. And I want you to be able to cite arguments that also part. I want you to be able to cite arguments from both the Federalist and Anti-Federalist when it comes to ratification of the new U.S. Constitution. A lot of your quiz for this section will be, you'll be looking at pieces, all right, or sections of a Federalist paper, and you tell me who said this and what was their fear? What are they saying in here? Why do you know this is a Federalist that would have said this? Why do you know this is an Anti-Federalist that would have said this one? Okay, and that's what a lot of this is, being able to pick that out and apply it to those issues that they were having. Okay, main ideas. After the Articles, so the Articles of Confederation is what I'm referencing here, you needed unanimous approval to approve a new constitution. That's going to be pretty darn impossible at this point in time. Okay? How do we get unanimous approval amongst the 13 colonies, which were so different? I mean, we would have trouble obviously with 50, but at that point in time, the difference between the geographic regions and what was going on, it was going to be a tough thing to do. At the convention, they scrap the Articles. Okay? Like I said, these delegates, they meet in secret at the Constitutional Convention. And so when they do this, they no longer need a unanimous vote for ratification. Ratification meaning approval. They're going to go 9 out of 13 states. And this is going to be huge. All right, why is it going to be such a big thing? Is the fact that it's going to be a lot more of a possibility for them to pass this with 9 out of 13 as opposed to 13 out of 13. Because once they decide to scrap the Articles, they scrap that unanimous vote, and that's important. All right, so let's look at who were they. We break this down. Federalists were some of your big names that were there that you would have heard of, maybe quote unquote, not quote unquote, but the founding fathers, that group. Okay, you have James Madison, John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, are some of your big ones that were Federalists. And who did they appeal to, and who were some of their followers? These were big farmers, business owners, merchants, and artisans, typically had a little bit of money. The Anti-Federalists are, well, somewhat of the opposite, all right? They write under aliases of Cato, Sentinel, Federal Farmer. Who do we know they are, okay? Like Patrick Henry, if you've ever heard of him. Give me liberty or give me death, that quote. It's Patrick Henry, all right? James Monroe, all right? You guys know him from Monroe Street. Jefferson, all right? He didn't write the actual Anti-Federalist papers, but he was a known Anti-Federalist, all right? Wanted power structure to be with the states. All right. Like I said, these are your smaller farmers, come from maybe more rural areas and maybe not as wealthy as the Federalists. Um, and they wrote their disdain or what their points of view in a lot of newspapers at the time. That's where a lot of this came from. So let's look at why did they want to scrap the articles? Let's go back to this. What were the weaknesses that the Federalists pointed out or were trying to fix? So the national government cannot impose or collect taxes. That's how else do you bring in money was going to be their issue. How are they going to do this? There was no national currency at the time, no national court system, no executive branch, no power to regulate trade among the states, did it amongst themselves. One vote per state, regardless of population. So, regardless if you were whether you were Virginia or whether you were, I don't know, South Carolina or a smaller, less populous state, you got the same amount of votes. All right. There was a 2/3 majority needed to pass laws, and it took unanimous consent, as I said, needed to actually amend the articles. So that's why they scrapped them and just start new. And hopefully people would join into what they wanted to do. Now, last thing I want to look at here today is the basics, all right? The very basic points from each side of what they wanted or what they were against. So let's start, we'll kind of go back and forth if it's a similar point. So at the end of the day, Anti-Federalists are against the constitutional ratification, while Federalists are for constitutional ratification. All right? Anti-Federalists, therefore, supremacy of state governments, while Federalists are for supremacy of the national government or supremacy of the federal government. Think of it that way, all right? Third, down there in Anti-Federalist, the Anti-Federalists, and this is a big one, they saw a need for a Bill of Rights. Why did they see a need for a Bill of Rights? It should be pretty clear to why they would do this, okay? They see a need for the Bill of Rights because, all right, they wanted to protect individual interests, all right? Or I should say the rights of individuals. They didn't want to see government come in, all right, and infringe on kind of individual liberties and freedoms. So they said, we need a Bill of Rights, all right? You jump over to the Federalist side, their third one down there. More power is given to national government to address the article weaknesses. That makes more sense. It goes right there with the second one. And then this last point, which is going to be important because later on we'll discuss what this is. Anti-Federalists are against what is known as the necessary and proper clause and also the supremacy clause, while the Federalists are going to be for it. All right. And we're going to explain what these are, but real brief, here's it. Necessary and proper gave the legislative branch the power to do what is necessary and proper to carry out laws. All right. And what this meant is if it wasn't specifically written in the Constitution, but it was necessary and proper for them to do this, it would then allow them to. All right. And this will make sense when we get into what this means. Like present day, let's go back to in the Constitution, right? There wasn't specifically something about draft, but it was necessary and proper for them to have a draft for World War I, World War II, because they have the power to conscript an army or to build an army. So it was necessary and proper for them to have a draft so that they could build the army. And this is what Anti-Federalists feared. They're like, well, they're going to abuse this. They can tie anything into being necessary and proper for them to do. And there might be some truth to that over our history, all right? It's something that could be debated. And then what is supremacy clause? Supremacy clause is this. Let's say that there is a law that says it's a federal law that says you must drive on the right side of the road. Okay, it's federal law. And then the state of Ohio comes in and says, in Ohio, you can drive on any side of the road. Supremacy clause is this. It says that the federal law that you must drive on the right side is supreme to the state law, meaning that the federal law is what is to be followed when there's conflict between the two. All right, so if something's illegal at the federal level, but legal at the state level, it would be the federal level, or sorry, the federal law, which is what is to be followed. And that is the supremacy clause, which is still around today. Both of these are necessary and proper and supremacy clause, but it was going to be debated back then. All right. Okay. It's an old slide. So that's it. Okay. I've also attached a video giving you instructions on how to do the assignment. All right. Relatively easy one to start, and we'll talk a little bit about this in class, but hopefully you've at least watched the video today, and then we can go over some of the stuff in class since your assignment is due Friday evening. All right. Thank you.